Welcome to the Getting High on Leadership series featuring Paul Karasik. Paul is one of America's top management consultants helping leaders succeed. He is the author of 9 books, including Sweet Persuasion and Brilliant Thoughts and Provocative Questions. His insights appear regularly in major publications, and he is one of the most sought-after executive coaches. Paul founded the American Seminar Leaders Association and the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles. He is a popular speaker at national conferences and has been on stages across all 50 states and internationally. Paul's work addresses the question, how can we transform conflict in business into collaboration? With decades of experience in management, leadership, and psychedelics, he brings a unique perspective on personal and societal growth. In this series, we'll be discussing his latest book, Getting High on Leadership, The Leader's Guide to Higher Consciousness. We'll be exploring the concepts, techniques, and mindset required to revolutionize leadership. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Getting High on Leadership series. My name is Rob Sanchez. I'm your host, and we are joined by the author himself, Paul Karasik. Paul, welcome again, and we're going to continue our journey today talking about the section called the leadership paradox. And we've brought up some leadership paradoxes already throughout the series. I think this one maybe hits the nail right on the head. One more time, right? Just making sure it's a resounding knowledge here that the reader has around their role as a leader and how impactful it can be.
Yeah, this is, in a way, this chapter, we talked a little bit about it, so short and so on and so forth, but it's actually the core of the book. In terms of consciousness, right? So, and I want to put this on the table now so we can refer to it as we move on through the book, and that's, we have an identity, a personality, the Rob personality, the Paul personality. This was given to us. This was a superimposition on us. When we were told we weren't just an emanation of consciousness in this world. We were Paul, who was born in New Jersey, who grew up with these parents, who has this ethnic background, and began to identify with that, be saying, that's who I am. I'm that Paul. But that Paul was made up. It was an invention. And we call that the ego, right? The ego is this conglomeration of experiences and thoughts that have evolved over time that we begin to say, this is who I am. I am that. Behind that, however, is consciousness, greater consciousness that permeates everything. Sometimes it's called cosmic consciousness, whatever word you want to give to it. And we could go spiritual names to it. We could go more scientific names to it. But let's just call it consciousness. Behind the personality is consciousness. That which is, was, and will always shall be. We're not going to go deep into that, but we can all recognize that consciousness can observe ego.
Right. That part of you that decides that you are Paul, or that I am Rob as I wake up today. That little part deciding that is the consciousness, right? The viewer.
Seeing that is a separate thing, right? So yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you know that's true. So you see that. So you see
it can be kind of weird to distinguish that, or to try to think about that. It can send you in maybe a little bit of a philosophical spiral, looking at what's consciousness versus ego.
It's not that, you don't have to go spiritual on it. You just have to look at it for what it is, that you can see that and judge and observe the ego. So who is it that's observing that ego? That's consciousness. Consciousness is observing the ego. Boy, geez, I never should have said that. Who's saying that? It's a little tricky here. Why? Because the judge of the activity is also part of the activity.
Right.
but I can see that too. I can see that too. I can see the judge and the judgment are the same. But it's obvious that we have a perception, we have a presence, we have a higher self, if you will, than just the ego. The ego is very limited. It's limited to what it knows, its own experiences, knowledge, memories, very limited. Broader consciousness, higher consciousness, has access to all ideas, all phenomena, all experiences, all that there ever was, is, or shall be, is part of consciousness. That part that is observing the ego. So what are we saying in this chapter? We're saying that when you come from the ego, you are not in a position to create the best results.
Because you're working to really maximize yourself as the leader if you're putting that ego first and not maybe looking for ways to step back, to step back and allow the team to be a team, like imagine the football coach, just running onto the field to just run a play really quick because he's given up hope on the defensive lineman and he thinks he can do it better this time.
Right.
It's just not, it's not the way you get it done. It's not saying that the coach isn't part of the team, but there's definitely a role that coach needs to play and a certain distance that coach has from the game, as it were, out on the field, and I think that even though that role in that analogy maybe is still a very important part of the team that's maximized, but I think it maybe builds that picture of what we're trying to say here around a leader and where you should be maybe leading from.
Well, everybody wants attention. Everybody wants recognition, including any leader. I mean, let's not jump and do
it's not about foregoing all recognition and becoming a humble monk.
No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because you were drawn to leadership because you want the attaboys. You want the, you're drawn to it for that. So there's nothing wrong with it. But if you really want that, if you really want to be exalted, as we say in this chapter, then you have to minimize yourself and let the higher part of you come through and not be coming from the ego, be coming from consciousness. And then you'll be exalted in the best possible way by saying, it wasn't me, it was the team.
Yeah. And I mean, from a conscious perspective, the value there is immense. And from a more like from a material perspective, the value there is also potentially immense because minimizing yourself means that you're delegating better and more often, which means that you have time to solve the problems that only maybe you can solve as the leader. And you can kind of see how that builds, that starts to lay a brick, one step at a time, to create that pathway.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, Rob. Minimize yourself in all sense, not just in taking credit, but in actual execution. Build the team up. A lot of times people say like, well, you have a business, or it's not always a business. Sometimes it's a service, and a service is not a business. And a business, speaking specifically to that, is something where if you're sitting on a beach in Hawaii with your friends, drinking a cocktail or whatever, there's money going into your bank account back home. That's a business. But if I have to get on a plane and fly somewhere, that's a service. To build a business, I need the team capable of doing everything but without me. I need, to your point, minimizing me, the idea of the coach going out on the field like you just used, it's the polar opposite we want, where everything goes on and it's almost the team is who's Who is the leader? We don't even know. They don't wear a hat. They don't have a name tag that says that I'm the leader. And everybody looks like the leader. And everybody is a leader. By minimizing me, but if I keep maximizing me, that's never going to happen. I'm never going to create a culture like that where you could just say, go talk to so-and-so. They know more about this than I do. Right. That's what a good leader should be saying all day long.
Yeah, I think it was Steve Jobs that said something like that about hiring people who are more intelligent than you are. Or it's like you're not supposed to tell, I think it was like you don't tell smart people what to do. You hire the smart people so that they tell you what to do.
Exactly.
Which is another way to look at it, that you can shore up your own deficits or any weaknesses that you have in the in the leadership landscape with those followers by building them up right and having that same attitude.
I think it was the president of AT&T, I forget, but we used to quote him all the time. He said, my unique skill is hiring people that are smarter than me. And, that's...
Same outcome there, isn't it? Yeah. He's relying on the team and trusting that they excel and, meet their own goals. And I think that confidence in the team lets them actually breathe and strive to do a good job instead of micromanagement or trying to get involved or maybe, can I get a hand on your keyboard with you? It's like, this is not leadership anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, that's it. So in this chapter, we want to focus on the whole idea of the smaller you are, the bigger you get. And the more I can refer to the team for everything. But I remember going to see a CEO, the president of Equitable Life Insurance in New York City. He invited me up. He had seen me speak at a conference, one of his conferences, and said, "Oh, you're in New York, why don't you visit?" So I went up there in this, like the 57th, like the top penthouse floor on Broadway, 57th. And at that time, the World Trade Center was still there, and I got to his office, and it was like this view of the whole island of Manhattan, and I'm sitting there waiting. I was brought into his office, and I'm sitting there waiting for him. But I noticed something. He had this huge desk. It was probably 10 feet big. It was a huge office too. I mean, he had a workout machine, a little stationary bicycle and stuff in there, and the office was huge. It was bigger than most apartments I've had. And this huge desk, maybe 10 feet, no computer on it, nothing on the desk, nothing, not one piece of paper. And I thought, wow. Oh, he had one of my books on his desk, which was nice because he knew he was going to see me, so he was going to refer to it, right? And he knew the book. He liked the book, Sweet Persuasion. And I thought to myself, that's interesting. So many leaders I go to, their phones are ringing off the hook. There's papers flying. They've got inboxes, outboxes. They're texting while they're talking. This guy, Jim Benson, who I later became friends with, and we wrote a book together.
His workspace was calm. It was serene.
Serene.
Yeah.
Calm.
If this web camera were any lower, you would see this little stack I've got on my own desk. It's not so serene on this side of the camera.
On this side, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I need to take a note out of his book.
I thought that is so. It's such a great metaphor and he was visionary, and
still running around getting stuff done too. Right?
Oh,
it wasn't like he wasn't working, and that's what that meant. It just really shows how organized and maybe how much he delegated correctly to get the business to run.
Absolutely. And he loved the people in the field. The insurance agents loved him. We did a book tour together, and I was amazed. I mean, people would wait for hours because they knew he had compassion for them. He was an agent. He started out door to door selling insurance. He had their hearts because he knew their hearts. And, it's just great to see that when it's done right like that. But and even the way watching him give speeches as we did the book tour and things, always self-deprecating humor, always minimizing himself from the platform, and not, we did and da 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 da. It was much more fun,
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm sure the team ended up considering him in the long term a better leader than they would have
oh yeah,
without that, right? It's funny how maybe leading less in some way ends up being that you're leading more if you do it consistently. And that's the real kicker here, I think, within this paradox.
I think it's almost like there's a saying, it's applied to something else, but the best leader is the one you don't know is there. They're just behind it. They're just energy. They're just, and they're not executing. It's not at that highest level. It's maintaining that space of consciousness and bringing that consciousness to the team and modeling it for them in action. So, yeah, it's what do they call that? Counterintuitive. By being small, you get big. And if you try to come on big, you're going to be small. They're going to put you down. That's the way it works. So
a whole lot to think about here within any of your projects or any space you're leading in. And again, I know in this episode we talked a lot more about businesses and corporation kind of leadership, but please take these concepts into any realm of leadership, like your personal life, family, groups you may work in, community groups, things like that. It's the same across the board, no matter the scale or the sphere.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's true, Rob. It goes across everything. When we and if we were going to sum up this chapter, put a bow on it, it's the word humility, and not getting all self-absorbed.
Yeah. Or if you realize you are being that way, come up for air, right? Start to realize it. Shorten those intervals. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Oh, be gentle with ourselves. No, absolutely. Absolutely. That goes without saying. We got to be gentle, and the same kind of care and understanding we've talked about giving to other people, we have to give that to ourselves and allow for that gentleness and growth and compassion when we do screw up, and we're going to screw up, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to say things that we wish we hadn't said, and we're going to get triggered and respond in ways that we could have done better. But to be gentle and understanding to ourselves, to model that, to experience that, then we know how to give that to other people. So again, this kind of, it's working with ourselves, with our own consciousness to observe that, say, oh, I went small there. Wow, what a step. Like if people could just get that from this chapter, I don't have to worry about the change. Just observe it, be with it, and the change will happen naturally.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And thank you for watching and listening. You can find the show notes below. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Getting High on Leadership series. If you have any questions, you can comment below or send them in via email to paul@paulkarasik.com. Follow him on Instagram at PK_the conversation. Find out more at wholesalerinstitute.com and psychedelic-awakening.com. The Getting High on Leadership series is produced by Rob Sanchez and Apartment 113, which can be found at apartment113.com and followed on Instagram at APT_113.